Welcome to the Firehorse podcast, where we talk to B2B founders and leaders about their real life experiences and wisdom on building, selling, and scaling businesses, and gain insights into what actually works across sales, marketing, go-to-market strategy, and AI. Today, I'm joined by James Word, founder of Next Focus, a company building what could be the infrastructure layer that enterprise AI has been missing. James has spent decades at the frontier of digital technology, from leading teams at Bluescape to founding Wowzer, one of the first platforms focused on AI ethics and image generation. He's now brought Next Focus out of stealth with a product called Plasma Field, backed by 17 patents, at a time when the conversation around AI governance and compliance has never been more urgent. James, it's great to have you on. Welcome to the Firehorse podcast.
Emily, thank you so much. Real pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you. So, to kick us off, can you please give our audience a brief introduction to who you are and what you've built throughout your career leading up to Next Focus?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try to keep it brief, but I'm going to go all the way back to when I was 12 years old. So I was that kid coding my own games when I was 12. In high school, I almost got caught hacking the VAX system while I was trying to look at my grades. And my teacher at the time actually caught it in the logs, and he confronted the entire class and he asked who the culprit was and asked that it would come forward. And I realized he didn't know who actually did it. So I chickened out and I never admitted it publicly, I guess, until now. Yeah, that was a long time ago. But I always think about that moment, especially when I think about security, governance, cybersecurity. Why was it that my teacher couldn't pinpoint that it was me specifically that did that? So it's funny that that problem still exists today. Then flashing forward, my career was always focused on kind of two sides at the same time, technology and business. For many years, I was a sales engineer, a business analyst, a solutions architect. I spent about 50% of my time in New York City working with some of the Fortune 500 and top ad agencies in the world to help implement digital asset management, work management, and workflow automation integrations across their tech stacks. That company that I worked for at the time was IO Integration, and we did really well. IO Integration was actually acquired by a UK company called Blueprint X. So if there's anyone out there from Blueprint X, hi. During that time, AI became a very natural fit for a lot of the projects I was working on. This was more early AI stuff, so computer vision, metadata tagging, classification, and prediction models. I then went to work for a company called Bluescape. That's a premium digital whiteboard on steroids, basically. They were also acquired a few years ago. But when I was working for them, I quickly became their kind of go-to skunkworks guy for all sorts of automations and AI use cases. So at that point, I was training my own models, and in secrecy, I built the entire Bluescape AI system, much to the chagrin of our CISO at the time, which is our Chief Information Security Officer. He was very surprised by it, and that was very unfortunate. But, that then became a spin-off company called Wowzer. So Wowzer was amazing. It was a rocket ship. I mean, we rode the wave of interest in image generation models, the early first wave of that. We had 140,000 users that signed up for the service in just the first 3 months. And they generated over 3 million images in that time, which you think would be a good thing, right, for a company. We were super excited, but we quickly learned that those users were just exploring the new tech and taking advantage of our freemium model. So only a small percentage of people at that time were actually willing to pay for image generation service, right? Image generation was so new and exciting, but people were just testing it out with no real business need for it. So after 2 successful exits and that one failure with Wowzer, I got to tell you, I learned the most from that failure. And when I got the chance to start Next Focus, I vowed to myself to not let ourselves or our customers fall into that same trap. Our entire business model is not to fall into the trap of sexy software, and instead focus directly on solving business pain, to do all the hard stuff that nobody else wants to do or can do, and provide tremendous value and return on investment. So that's all we really do. We're just an elegant AI native technology that helps our customers solve business needs. That's pretty much all we do.
Perfect. And you make a bold claim on your website: 70% of enterprise AI initiatives fail, not because the AI doesn't work, but because the infrastructure does not exist. In your experience, what's the single biggest mistake that companies are making right now?
Good question. So I guess first that number is actually kind of a blend of two different reports that have come out. And we chose that number or that range, right, to be 70 to 85% to be more defensible in the minds of enterprise leaders. And so what those two reports are, the first one is a corporation report on competitive market analysis. And that report says that more than 80% of projects, AI projects fail, right? And then there's an MIT report that we're not directly quoting there, but they say that 95 of all AI pilots failed to deliver a return on investment. So that's really extreme. I mean, if we put that on our website, nobody would believe us, but that's the reality is 95% of AI pilots are failing to deliver return on investment. So that's pretty extreme. Now, the biggest mistake people are making, our take on this is basically that AI is to technology what nuclear fusion is to energy, right? So it's incredibly powerful, but wild and completely dangerous if you don't tame it. We need to contain AI in order to get the true power out of it. So you need a nuclear fusion, you need a tokamak, right? So a tokamak is that big metal donut machine, if you haven't seen it. You can get videos on YouTube about it, but that big metal donut machine they're working on that's wrapped in magnets that's designed to hold the hot fusion plasma, right, to gain that energy. If you do it right, you get tremendous amounts of power, but if you don't, the whole thing just fizzles out before it creates any real value whatsoever. So we feel like that is the state of AI technology right now, and we've created our flagship product called Plasma Field to be that tokamak for AI.
People are throwing enormous amounts of money at AI. Where are most of them going wrong, and what does building on sand actually look like in practice?
You ask good questions. Building on sand. So houses and buildings need to be on solid foundations, right? And especially here in California, we have earthquakes. So the engineering, the foundations, the materials need to be specially designed to handle that. Did you know that earthquakes in California, the skyscrapers are basically built to float on top of giant steel ball bearings? So that's when the ground shakes underneath, the building just moves and floats on top of it and it doesn't come crashing down. So that's some pretty amazing engineering if you think about an entire skyscraper floating on metal balls. So I think that similar forces are probably at play, are actually at play in software from a foundations perspective. Right now everybody's super focused on agents and building and vibe coding, and they're doing it all on top of no foundation. So that's the most extreme example. People are completely playing with fire, and when the ground shakes, it's going to come tumbling down. Or worse, that app is going to be accessing private data, and that becomes your highly vulnerable attack vector from a security perspective. I cringe every time I see these systems that people are super proud about. I mean, what you can do with vibe coding is really cool, but I have to be careful when I deliver my feedback because most people don't understand the level of risk that they're introducing to themselves and their businesses. The opposite problem is doing nothing, right? So if you do nothing, then you're setting yourself up to the situation where your employees and even yourselves, let's all admit it, are just going to use AI, right, to help get your work done. And that means that we're putting proprietary information and data into AI systems, and employees are probably doing that and not even aware that they're basically giving that information to AI companies. That's called shadow AI. And I think it's a huge problem. So there's got two problems. One, it's not governed well, or vibe coding is creating attack vectors. And then the opposite problem is you're just feeding your information and leaking that information to AI providers. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I think that's the sand. That's more like quicksand, actually.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, Next Focus has come out of stealth with Plasma Field after filing 17 patents. You did touch on this earlier, but can you explain what it does and why you think it represents a whole new class of software?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be clear, it's 17 patents pending. So these are all relatively new. Plasma Field, we're also relatively new. So it's what we think is a new class of software. And I can try to explain that a bit. So like the tokamak, that metal donut that's containing the plasma, right? Plasma Field is a containment system. That's the way I think of it. And then that name is intentional. So with it and with AI, you can drive real business needs. If you contain the AI, you can actually drive a real business need. And if you don't contain it within the plasma field, if you will, then we feel like you just end up with a very expensive metal donut. So, what does it do? Plasma Field is basically the first platform that treats human and AI agents as the same thing, governed by the same rules, audited the same way. All the costs, performance are tracked the same way. Every product on the market draws a hard line, right? They say humans over here and AI over there, and we kind of try to integrate them together. We take that line and erase it entirely, and we do that architecturally. So we consider AI and humans to be first-class citizens in the same architecture. So what does that mean in practice? When an AI agent does anything inside of Plasma Field, whether that's reading a file or writing a data record or using a tool or triggering a workflow, the same permission model that governs employees also governs agents. So it's the same fully immutable audit log trail that you would have in any other elegant system of record. So because we built this from the ground level, it can't really be replicated by other systems, right? If you're bolting on AI to another system, that's not what we have. So every operation in Plasma Field is deterministically governed in less than 15 milliseconds. That's architecture. And that is something that can't be replicated by bolting on AI to other systems. So then that leads us to why this is new class of software, right? So right now you have work management, data platforms, AI, agent frameworks, governance systems, all separate systems. So say that's like 4 different systems, right? That most enterprises have to maintain just to do this one thing with AI. Plasma Field reconciles all of that and converges all of that, all 4 of those systems into one system. Gartner, they don't have a category for this yet. That's why we're calling it a new class of software. For us, that's the tell, right? When a new class of software emerges before analysts can define it, that's where the real opportunity is, we think. And we want to define and own that category, whatever name it becomes. My pet name for it right now is, I call it the eyesore, which is the intelligence system of record. So it probably will not use that name, but nobody likes an eyesore. So, the 17 patents pending and partnerships are all surrounded around that context. So how you enforce your permissions in an ultra-modern, high-dimensional way, how you ensure verifiable governance, how you build an institutional memory and capture value for your institution that everyone else just throws away today. So everyone else is trying to add AI on top of systems. We bring the systems into this coherent Plasma Field, basically within an AI tokamak.
It's all insane to me. Wow. I'm blown away. You talk about the idea that AI generated applications need to be governed the same way that digital assets are. Can you explain what that means and why it matters so much?
Yeah. I woke up one morning as a business leader and a technologist that's trying to solve problems in the industry. And then, reading news about and witnessing what people are doing with vibe coding, right? And my first instinct was like the hairs stuck up on the back of my neck. And I thought, oh man, we're all in trouble. Software is dead. And I thought, man, I think maybe I should start a coffee shop or something. But then I woke up the next morning and I realized, I was like, no, this is actually causing a huge governance problem. And that code and applications and vibe coded applications, just like digital asset management, are now going to become content. And that content needs to be governed, and it needs to be, put within the tokamak in order to control it, what it can and cannot access, what the rules and permissions and security model is behind all of that. Otherwise, it's just a huge risk. So that's basically what we're calling code is content. So inside of Plasma Field, you can do vibe coding, but your vibe coded application accesses completely private data and is completely governed by all the same permission model system that the entire platform has. So it's very safe and you can do amazing things with it. So I think it's actually an exciting time rather than a scary time.
With the FTC, GDPR, and the EU omnibus bill all moving in the same direction, it feels like regulation is catching up fast. What should businesses be doing right now to make sure they're on the right side of that shift?
Wow, what should they be doing right now? Paying attention. I mean, seriously, like really do anything in the direction of governance, because the problem right now is, everybody is seduced by the promise and the power and the return on investment, the new technology, the sexy software kind of thing that I was talking about. And instead, and the competitive advantage, I think that's really probably one of the main things. So everybody's racing to this competitive advantage, but we're all doing it at the same speed with the same tools. And just like with our phones, all of us walk around with our phones and our applications knowing well and good that these applications are actually tracing your whereabouts 24/7 every day. And nobody really cares about that. You're kind of like the fringe freak that actually cares about the applications that are tracking your every whereabouts on your phone. I think the same analogy is there for business right now, and that's with all of the governance and security levels. And so I really see what the FTC, GDPR, and the omnibus bill are doing is, they're being the adults in the room that are responsible and putting in regulations that are necessary, because otherwise everybody's just getting themselves in trouble. So I see regulation as a great thing. It's really important. And I think it's that balance between regulation and technology that's going to make everything possible and save us.
Makes sense. You've presented on the ethics of AI at South by Southwest. Do you think the industry is taking the ethical questions seriously enough, or are we still mostly talking about it without acting on it?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. It is, and it is an awkward question. I think the honest answer is no. I really don't think very many organizations are taking the ethics seriously. And the ones that are taking it seriously are taking it too far. So we kind of have this juxtaposition about AI is evil and AI is exciting and good. And the truth is, and this is why I like the regulations by GDPR and omnibus bill, where those two things come together is essentially an ethics question, right? And that's where that is going to be met and going to be enforced. At Wowzer, we came up, that's why I presented at South by Southwest, because it's much clearer in image generation when you're talking about deep fakes, when you're talking about infringing on intellectual property rights, training models, the imagery and artwork and the styles that are being used in those models. It's all visually very clear what the ethics problem is. I think that ethics problem gets even blurrier when you start talking about AI copy and analysis. I mean, you can ask AI to basically rewrite an entire book, and that to me is an obvious ethics problem. So where we end up on that is going to be really interesting. I do think there's some companies that are doing some fascinating things. Even the most recent thing with Anthropic and Fable, right? So Mythos became now Fable. And Fable is basically a layer that governs, like this tokamak idea that I have, it governs Mythos. So Fable is basically a layer that protects against the potential problems that Mythos can introduce. So it almost acts like a traffic cop in the middle. And that's right at the edge of, are we going to destroy ourselves or are we going to make this actually useful? So I just think it's a fascinating topic and it's not going to end. If anything, it might get more extreme.
What's one thing that you wish every business leader understood about AI governance before they started their next project?
Let's see. The one thing I wish you understood, oh, yes, is that governance requires architecture. It requires software, actually. AI is not going to govern itself. You cannot rely on a system that hallucinates to govern. You don't want your security guard that's guarding your building to be on some drug where they're hallucinating different things. That's basically a recipe for disaster. So very, very clearly to me in this field, the true use of AI is still a software problem. It's not actually an AI problem. AI is amazing. AI is fantastic. And that's not the problem right now. It's the software that governs it. It's the meta software, if you will, that is what's needed right now.
If anyone listening wants to find out more about Next Focus or Plasma Field, which I'm sure they will, where's the best place for them to go?
Best, easiest place is nextfocus.ai. And we also have a channel on YouTube, but it's very small right now. So nextfocus.ai, you can contact us at contact@nextfocus.ai. And we love talking to people about solving their business problems and whether we may or may not be able to help.
Perfect. I will drop those contact details below the video as well. James, this has been a really interesting conversation, especially hearing how the infrastructure layer is the piece that so many companies are missing and what it looks like when businesses get that right. You have blown my mind a little bit, I must say. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And to our audience, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.